Good morning. This is Jason Dean at Film Fanatic, Jason Dean YouTube channel. We are almost. This is the second to last video already. I can't believe it. So this is I believe, the 12th movie I've seen in this franchise. So this has been quite a journey. It's been uh, it's been pretty epic to say the least. And this movie, Freddy vs. Jason. Before I dive into it, I'll just say a couple things about it. So I uh, I just finished that. Just finished watching it last night, and I've seen it. I've seen it a bunch of times. I've seen it a whole bunch of times. So it's such a cool culmination of well, all things horror to a degree, but then also for this massive franchise I've been covering. So yeah, it's very exciting. But before I get into that, I'll talk a little bit about some music happenings and some events and things like that and such. So with Quantum, on at least on the Quantum front, just a little recap of some things that we're going to be doing in the fall, or we shouldn't say the fall. It's not quite the fall yet, so I don't want to go there yet. But it's basically stuff that's some gigs that we have that are technically kind of off season here in Maine, because Maine, if you've never been to Maine before, anybody out there watching this channel, it's known as vacation land. So it's got this thing about it where where we live here in the mid coast, everything is pretty seasonal. I live in Northport, so I'm pretty close to Belfast and Camden. One of the things I like about where I live here in Northport is it's pretty central to surrounding towns, and it's not all that far from civilization. For instance, I live in Northport, right on Route One, and behind me is Bayside, and Bayside is a big you know uh, kind of hotspot during the summer. There's a lot of tons of like summer rentals, and there's tons of cottages. There are people that live down there, but the population really goes down after the summer. Most people come up here and fill up that whole area during the summer. There's like I said, there's all these little cottages that people rent, and there's a lot of house rentals. And there's quite a few people that live there year round, but the population, like if you drive, and it's a beautiful spot. I'm literally like 5 minutes from the ocean, if that, less than that really. And so if you drive down through that area, and it's a real beautiful spot. There's a couple of really nice roads, and it's all along the ocean, and there's a lot of cool areas where there's woods, and there's a couple of big foresty areas. And then you drive along these roads, and you come into these areas where there's tons of these like houses and cottages, and houses all back to back and together, that are like right on the water. So if you drive down there, which I do a lot, if you drive down there during the summer, like say in anytime in June through August, there's people all over the places, people walking all around. There's a couple of really beautiful beach spots down there that people go swimming. One spot in particular, which is at the tip of Bayside, where there's a big swimming spot, and there's like tons of people that usually go swimming down there. They actually have a lifeguard down there. It's by the Bayside town hall that's right there, or the Bayside Center, which is like a little bit of a like a little mini theater that they use sometimes for events. But if you drive down there, that during the summertime, there's people everywhere, people walking, and there's people swimming, and usually all the areas where there's like two areas in particular that are like full on kind of beach areas that people go swimming. And there's a couple other spots that are a little bit more rocky, but they're still they're just gorgeous and they're beautiful. And there's tons of people everywhere. But if you drive down there, in October or November or say the middle of winter, you don't see anybody. Like there's nobody around in that whole spot. Even on a nice day. I mean, granted, you're not going to be swimming on those days, but the population is like cut in half once the cold weather approaches in the fall season. So it's very, very seasonal. And with Maine in general, that's most of the businesses up here. I mean, obviously there are a lot of places year round, but it's mostly all seasonal. So there's like 4 months or so out of the year that people that are in the tourist or in the entertainment business or in the food industry or things like that they have this opportunity to make a lot of money or make their income over that season or during that season. And after that, a lot of the time, it's there's a lot of downtime, and there's a lot of getting back to music. The same thing, well, for restaurants, but then also for musicians, there's a big window of opportunity during the summer for there to be lots of work, and then things taper off. There are occasions and times where you can still be relatively busy, but it's never anywhere compared to like during the fall. It's or during the winter. It's pretty wild, the transition. And also it's the only thing. I mean, I love it, but then it's the only thing I kind of don't like about it is that it goes from one extreme to the other sometimes. And sometimes you luck out and you can keep it somewhat sustainable. Usually in the past, at least for me, in my work history, I used to work in restaurants for a really long time, plus attempt to do this crazy music thing. And usually that's how it was there too. With summertime was completely insane and very busy, and then with gigs and especially with working in the restaurant industry. But then you would have the locals, and you'd have enough to sustain it afterwards. And at least with musicians, there's I don't know, this year I feel like I've been in Maine for a long time, and I feel like this summer in particular has been like gig wise and music wise has probably been the busiest summer I've ever had since I've been here in Maine. It goes from one extreme to the other to a degree, because like during the summer and the height of the summer, there's like I've had a lot of times where I'm playing 4 to 6 times a week, back to back. And then during the winter, like last winter, there were virtually no gigs. Maybe once a month. But on a better winter, you have stuff maybe every couple of weeks. Sometimes you get things where they'll be consistent, but generally it's like really sporadic. So it goes from one extreme to the other. It would be nice if things could sustain itself a little bit more, but it is what it is. But at the end of the day, I feel like you know, summertime here in Maine, the weather's been really great. So I think it's the most beautiful place in the world. You can't beat it. And uh, you know, and usually in the past, like wintertime is used for times of lots of other things as far as projects. Typically like the getting back to quantum, like we record whenever we've recorded albums. We've always done them during the winter. Like the last album that we did, In Dreams We Saw, we recorded that in January, and I remember that period because it was like brutally cold, and we recorded it in my music space, and it took me. I have a little heater in it, and it would take hours for the place to kind of heat up, and it was still kind of chilly. But so typically during the winter, there's a lot of. It's cool in a lot of ways because you can get more practicing done. You can usually some of the projects and bands that I play in, we usually it gets a little bit harder to rehearse during the summer with the bands and some of the projects. Like for instance, like with Quantum, we usually practice during the winter and the fall and whatnot. We always practice every Thursday, but since the summer came, and we've been fortunate to have a lot of gigs, we play. We kind of take take a break from rehearsing, and we rehearse. So we rehearse, all try to rehearse all year round, and then when the summer the summer comes, we usually take a break. Last summer we were playing a lot, but it was mostly from like July to August, mid July to August, and then into actually December. We ended up getting a bunch of gigs where we were playing at a local place, Threshers a lot, and a couple other gigs, but we were still maintaining rehearsing and stuff, and we typically rehearse on Thursdays. This year felt like it was busier, which has been great, and plus a lot of other things going on. So we took off from rehearsing and just concentrated on doing the gigs, and then getting the shows together on my own and promotion, and once things slow down, we'll get back to doing rehearsals. Another band I play in, two other bands that I play in, we're starting to resume our practice schedules during the week. That's going to be happening next week. So it's good in a lot of ways because you get to woodshed and you get to practice and work on some new material and kind of fine tune things after a while. The same thing we'll be starting up, again with quantum practices, and summertime it's a little bit harder to do that. And like I said, there's more time just individually to practice, work on music. I tend to write a lot of music, or I tend to write more music during the winter, fall. Although it comes and goes. I write a lot of stuff sometimes during the summer too when I have the chance or when I find some inspiration. Um, and definitely for like recording projects, it's really great for to do that during the winter time because there's not as many obligations, and scheduling wise it's a lot easier. So that's a big thing. And like projects like this with the Film Fanatic, I started doing this pretty heavily during the winter, and I have more time to do it, and that's where I started kind of pushing this a little bit more. So it has its pluses, definitely. Overall, I'd rather be playing gigs and trying to do those kinds of things, but it is what it is. You need to adjust. I'm not a big fan of the cold, but um, you know, winter. I actually like the winter, but the cold sometimes is a little bit too harsh. But you try to make the best of what you have, and you know, granted, there's a lot of things you can't do during the summer because of the sometimes the how hectic things get, and also during the summer, about 99% of the gigs that I've done or that I've been involved with are all outside, so obviously those can't sustain themselves. But it's been great. So we still have some things coming up with Quantum. We'll be back at Lulu's in a couple weeks, and I believe it's going to be our last one for Quantum, doing our little residency that we do at Lulu's on Oak Street, because that's outside. So stay tuned for that. There'll be some promotion of that coming up. I'm going to try to do a little thing around that where we're maybe make it a little bit of an extra special event, and I might try to get it recorded. I'm trying to get my buddy John Luff to come out and record the show for the do like a video recording and some audio. He's really great, and I think that might be kind of a cool thing to use and to have to kind of top off the season there, because it's been a lot of fun playing there. And then also um, Mike Whitehead, who plays bass in the band, my friend Mike, I'm going to talk to him about bringing some his mobile recording unit to record the show, and maybe record like some kind of live album or something. So I think that might be kind of a cool thing. And I might use that as a promotional thing or throw that in with the promotional thing to try to garner up maybe a little extra interest in people, maybe wanting to come out to it. It was interesting. I had a conversation with a friend the other day, and her boyfriend had commented, who's also a musician. They were saying how uh, they thought it's a funny thing because there's like, it's happened a lot with musicians, and it's always a conversation of where, about when and where to book a gig, or the chance of like how you build an audience, or how you risk the problem of maybe overexposure, and you like, a fatigue sets in where people, you know don't want to see you play anymore because you're playing a lot in one concentrated area, so you don't necessarily build an audience. You just kind of, you do initially, but then people lose interest because you're playing a lot in one particular area. So there's like a fatigue that sets in, and you're not really reaching a new audience, and you're kind of to a degree overexposure. Uh, and like a couple months ago, I met a guy who lives in Portland, Maine, and he's a musician, and he plays in numerous bands down in that area. And he was telling me he's got one band in particular that is like a pretty well known, band, pretty well known name in Portland. And what they do is they're very very strategic about when they play shows, and they only try to play, a handful of places, maybe just a couple of places in that area where they'll play in Portland, and then maybe outside of Portland, and then a place that might be in the surrounding town, and they just kind of concentrate on that, and that's it. They don't like uh, try to book 100 gigs in that vicinity. And the reason, and we talked about that, and he said that they're very strategic about how they do that, and he said that's the way that they can build an audience, because like when you do something where it's spread out time wise, he says that's when people typically will come out to the show, because they have something to look forward to. They start, they after they've seen you play maybe 2 months ago or a month ago, they crave that, and if they're fans of your music, they'll come out. And that he feels like that's the way that they've culminated an audience, and have grown as a band by building a fan base, and they don't overexpose themselves by saturating the market, and then people are just like, well, we've seen them play, we don't want to see them again, and blah blah blah. So it's very very strategic, and that's how it is. And I totally understand that, if you're building an audience, and you have to be, when you're playing shows, and when you're booking shows, and you're putting all those things together, you do have to be mindful of other things aside from uh, the variables, or the things that are, directly pertaining to the show, whether it's like, what time you're playing, and how you're going to how you're going to do it, as far as like what do you need to bring, from, whether it's system stuff, or scheduling, and working out the pay details, and then also the promotion. Outside of the immediate things that surround gigs, there's obviously other things you got to take into account. If there's other events going on, um, if the shows are really close together, if you have, succession of shows, those kinds of things. And I have a couple of friends that also play music who've been doing it longer than I've been doing it, and they essentially do it for a living for the most part, and they hit it pretty hard. They're playing all the time, and they're in a rotation a lot of different places, and they're playing everywhere, and they're playing all the time. They have a uh, they have a thing about where they have about three different projects that they have, and or two different bands, and it's two kind of configurations, kind of the same thing, but they're both different. There's a full band, and then there's also just like a duo, very similar to each other, but they play all the time. And I've talked with him and talked with him about that very same thing, about how they market themselves, and then how they sustain what they do. And it's never come up in that way. It's interesting because they never talk about, that thing of what I was had that discussion with this guy in Portland, where they never talk about this sense of where they're because they're playing so much, uh, they risk overexposure and oversaturating the market. They're in these guys are in a rotation of various venues, but they play a lot and they're very active. And they also one of the main guy whose project it is actually Troy Youngblood, an amazing musician, super cool guy. He he makes his living off of playing gigs and playing music. So it's a matter of full on income for him. So he needs to be doing it more. You have a lot of situations where musicians have regular full time day jobs. So it is more of a thing of where it's scheduling wise, it's obviously more complicated. But it was interesting, and it's never been a case of at least talking with him about it. He's able to sustain it, and he's never mentioned or said anything about where, well, maybe we shouldn't play again at the Martial Wharf or play at this particular place because we've been, we've been there a lot, and maybe people won't want to come out to see us. It seems like for him, talking with him, it's almost the opposite because those folks still come out and they still want to see that music and go to that venue and drink those beers and stuff. So it's an interesting thing. And there's somebody else I know too, Lucky Blind Albert, who's like a local guitar player, local legend, and they also make their living pretty much playing gigs, and they play all over the place, and they play in a lot of the same venues all over the town, all over town. They're really great about marketing their shows, but I've talked with him a lot, and I look to him as a mentor in a lot of ways, and I've gotten a lot of great advice from him. And he never really says that either. He just hits the pavement as hard as he can, and they play a lot of shows, and there's never this. He never says there's like a risk of oversaturating. Uh, they play a lot of little shows, and then if they play a bigger place, they're very good about marketing. They notice when that happens, and they play like say a show where there's like like more of a high profile show. People come out to that even more so because they play all these other little shows. So there's like this buzz, and they've been doing it forever. So they have like a really great steady fan base for the most part. So it's an interesting, like I'm kind of in the middle. Like I understand that, and I understand the thing of the risk of oversaturating yourself. I don't know. Like I'm kind of cut from a different cloth. Like I'm in the middle of both of those things. Like a lot of the times, I find myself I'm in the middle of there's like a lot of times like if you talk about a subject or some kind of topic, there's usually it always comes up that there's usually always like there's two perspectives on those things. And I typically always have this weird kind of third perspective on things. I typically am kind of in the middle and pretty central on both things, and I can try to understand both. I might not agree with them, but I try to really understand both perspectives because they're both viable and they both are very important. But I typically am like a third. I typically have a third perspective, and I'm in the middle, and I kind of use a little bit of both to a degree, and I try to understand that and how that works and what that entails. And but anyway, so a friend had commented like because we play at Lulu's quite a bit, and their first reaction was like, "Wow, like I can't believe they play the same place all the time. Don't they risk the idea of, or risk the thing of like, aren't people sick of you, or don't, if you play at one place all the time or quite a bit, you risk like a fatigue setting, and that people after your sixth time or whatever playing there, they don't want to see you again because you play there so much," which makes sense. But the thing that's cool, and that's been something I feel like that's been special, at least about that gig, is when we play at Lulu's, and even it was a thing too. Even when we used to play at Fog, who which is the restaurant they also own, Ashley Seelig. She's the owner of that, and it's basically attached to the same place. We did the same thing where we were in a residency situation there, and we were playing inside, and we played there all the time. And I noticed that, and we also did that with our jazz group, the Whitehead Dean group, both projects. And I noticed the thing that was cool about it. Like I thought, okay, this is great, but maybe people will get sick of us, or maybe there'll be like a fatigue, and people will be like, well, I don't need to see these guys; they play here every week, kind of thing. And maybe there'll be people that like the stuff, or you have your friends and they'll come, but that's about it. You're not going to necessarily, it can get stagnant. And the unique thing about that is I found that I have been in bands, and that's happened before, where like we would play a lot, say in Bangor. There were a couple of clubs that we would play at, and I noticed there was like we were there a lot, and there was, and this is years ago, but there was a thing of where suddenly people weren't coming to see us anymore because we were playing there a lot, and it was a bar. It was more of a typical bar kind of scenario, and it was in a college town, so I definitely experienced that. But the thing that I found was unique about Fog was that every time we play in there with both bands, it was kind of a different vibe. It was always we typically wouldn't play. We'd play there on off nights too. It would be like on a Thursday and a Sunday. So we typically get it's not as busy as say a Friday or Saturday, but we'd always get a little bit of a different crowd, and it was always, especially during the summer. So I never felt that that was really happening. But the thing that I noticed even more so about doing the Lulu's thing is because essentially it's like an ice cream place, a gelato place, and they do have this cool thing where they serve alcohol. One thing I noticed about that is that every time we've played there, there's always a totally different audience because it's all tourists most of the time. I have some friends that show up to it, and folks, that nature that come out, and they seem to dig the music or whatever in the scene, and they're really supportive. But what I noticed that when both bands play there, and at least this season with Quantum and the jazz group, we both get totally different audiences, and each time there's like this big flux of people basically coming in and getting ice cream and just kind of hanging out in the courtyard, and then they leave, and then there's a whole another group of people, and it seems like during the duration of our sets, like we usually are there for 3 hours, there's always new faces, and there's always like a new vibe going on, as far as like sometimes people are, it's really mellow, and then there's quite a few people there, and then it kind of clears out, and then there's space where there's not really many people there, and then there's like this other wave of people that come in, and then suddenly there's like this different energy where people are really digging it, but it's always different. It's never predictable, and that's what I like about it. So it feels special that way, where we're not falling into that space of where there's a fatigue necessarily setting in and people are sick of us. I feel like it's always new, and it keeps and I don't know, I feel like for us as musicians too, I mean, we all have our good days and bad days where we feel like we're on our game, but I feel, and that's a normal, natural kind of thing, but it feels like with in that space there literally is like a new energy and a different energy, and the band plays differently each time, and we do some of the same tunes, but we change the sets a lot, and the energy is always different, and then the reactions are always different, and we kind of cater to that or create that vibe. So it's always a little bit unpredictable, which I really love about it. So I think it's different. It's a different kind of scenario. But getting back to the actual shows, for Quantum, so we have our last, I believe it's our last Lulu show coming up in a couple of weeks, and that will be probably, I believe, the last of the season. And then the next show, which actually just came out, or actually which I just booked, we're going to be doing a show which is going to be a week from tomorrow, on the 16th, September 16th, we're going to be doing a show at Ada's. And I had been looking into venues, and I have a little group of friends that also do electronic music. My friend Ronnie and Halsey, who are just like amazingly talented guys. They're super cool guys, and we play in a band together, Bone Broth. And I've known Halsey a little bit longer, and we've played in a couple other things together. But we all have like a real deep love for original material, but then also electronic music. And I've known Ronnie for a few years, and he's an amazing guitar player, musician. You know, he's done all kinds of things. He's done some high profile gigs from, he played with Les Claypool for a long time, and he also wrote the music for South Park, and he's played with, all kinds of amazing musicians. Adrian Belew, he's played with Stuart Copeland. I mean, just a crazy resume. And so been lucky enough to play a lot of gigs with him, and he's just an amazing guy. But we had him play with his electronic group for our CD release show, and it went really well, and it was really fun. And his stuff was pretty pretty wild. Like I remember, it was funny when we did the CD release show. Uh, I used to see him play. I met him. He used to play at Cafe Miranda in Rockland. Actually, where we did our release show. He used to play on Oak Street where we did our show, but he played there for like two years, and he would play every Saturday. But basically, he would show up with um, a couple different instruments, and he was always eclectic. He would build his own guitars and build his own sets. Basically, he would build these like his own drums, and he would basically play this really kind of interesting eclectic kind of background music that was definitely ambient inspired. It had a world music kind of vibe. It's very electronic, but it was kind of background stuff. And he would basically do all these like improvised sets where he would just kind of loop various parts. He'd play a little bit of guitar and then switch over to the bass and then play some drums and loop stuff and add different instruments. Some of the stuff had a Middle Eastern vibe to it. Like it was really wild and not like something you would see normally. And I remember going there. My friend Callie and I, we used to go and hang out there, and he'd always play. And it was the first time I saw him play, and I was like, "This is really cool. Like this is interesting." And then fast forward a year, I started playing in a band with him through my friend Cara Luzon, who's a violin player, really amazing musician, an amazing person, and she put together this band and asked me to play, and Ronnie was the guitar player, and I was like, oh wow, that's the same guy. And then so we started playing in this band Bone Broth, and Halsey's also a part of that band, and we started playing last summer together, and it was great, and I've gotten to know him over the years. Fast forward, quite a few uh, months later after that whole like kind of period, and I had was putting together the Quantum thing, and I wanted to put out this new album. It's been 3 or 4 years since our last album, and we played a lot last summer, and I was like I was starting to itch to play more this summer. But the main thing was around this album. We hadn't put out any new music in a long time, so I had asked him. I knew he did a lot of electronic music, but I knew him mostly from what he did at Miranda. And I said, "Hey, would you want to do a show with us?" And then so that all worked out, and he did a show, but he did an entirely different thing of where he did all of these regular tunes that he had written, and it was all like heavy electronic. It had like aspects of metal, and it had aspects of like dubstep, hip hop, really great. But it was completely different than what he would do normally. It was wild, and I had not heard any of that stuff, and so I knew it would be great because he's really good. But so I remember when he played at the show and he started playing, he played a set of all of his original stuff. I was kind of blown away, and I was just like, I kind of got into this in this weird mode. I was like kind of in a deer in headlights because I was kind of blown away and taken aback and kind of intimidated by how good he was, and I was just like, what? And then I kind of got nervous of like, wow, we got to follow this, like, but in the end, it was great. It made us play better, I felt. But I was kind of blown away by it. It was just really great. So anyway, fast forward more time. We've talked a lot about trying to find a place where, we could do a show together again, and then also get our buddy Halsey to play because he's an amazing musician and he does all this great original music and he's never really played out before and he's been wanting to do it. So we thought, we all three of us all love a lot of the same music and we have a lot of commonality. And the music that Halsey does and what Ronnie does and what Quantum does is there's a similarity, but it's all like really, really different from each other. And it's all original stuff. And I thought like, would be great. So we brainstormed about ideas around, what about if we found a venue that we could, do this thing, and we have like 3 sets of where each of us could kind of do a showcase. So since then, I've been like looking into brainstorming about that, and then also a place that we could do it maybe as a a monthly thing or a residency, something that we could do it, like sustain it as a possibility. Because there are venues, even though it's seasonal, there are places that have music year round. So that was the other idea. It's like something that we could like build an audience possibly with. And so I had been in touch with a few places about that for a while, and then I was able to get a date through Ada's, and so that's what this gig is going to be. Unfortunately, Ronnie cannot do it, but we're going to do it anyway, and it's going to be me and Halsey. We'll do a Quantum set, and then Halsey's going to be also involved doing his really amazing, hip hop funk infused electronic music. He's going to be doing a set. It's all original stuff. He plays live bass for it also, and he's like an incredible bass player. And then, and unfortunately, Ronnie can't do it, but we'll do it at some point. But I have Spencer Roulard, who I met actually online through Facebook, who also does electronic music, and he has a radio show on WRFR, and he does all this wild like modular synth stuff, and it's all like improvised, but it's like really almost like techno, but it's really cool stuff, and he seems like a really cool guy. So he's gonna open things up. He's gonna be part of that show also. So I'm very excited about that. So we have three different groups. I was really surprised but psyched that Ada's was into kind of taking a chance with this kind of thing. It's not something that they normally do, and so they were really open to it. So we'll see how things go. I mean, it could be really great. It could not. Maybe it won't go over really well there, but I'm excited to at least try it out and try to have some fun. And the other thing is that it's going to be, basically 3 groups playing all original music. There's no covers that any of us do. Not that I have anything against that, but I feel like that's even more exciting for us to be able to present something like that. So that's coming up next week, September 16th. It's going to be starting at 8:30 at Ada's, right on Main Street in Rockland. So if you're around, please come and check that out. It's going to be Halsey's debut as a solo artist, so super excited about that. So, and then after that, October 1st, we have a show. Halsey and I, again, we're going to be doing a show on October 1st at my friends Jillian Reed and Daniel Richmond. They have a apartment in Camden, which is right next door to River Ducks, and we're going to be doing a concert there, like an outdoor concert, and it's going to feature Quantum and also Halsey, and we're going to be doing a couple of sets of music, and it's going to be outside, and it's going to start around 2 o'clock and it's going to be on a Saturday, so that should be really fun and exciting, and that will be again the two of us playing a show, and so we have a few things coming up, and so stay tuned, and I've been promoting those things on Facebook and things like that. So now we'll get to the main topic at hand. So this is Freddy versus Jason. So again, this is the second to last movie in this entire series where I've been covering all the movies in the Friday the 13th franchise, and then also a couple of movies that are kind of spin-offs of that. This is one of them. This is like the spin-off of the franchise. The rest of them have pretty much all been directly part of the franchise, maybe the exception of Jason X, which I did a show on. basically Jason Voorhees in space, which is like just wild and crazy and terrible all at the same time. But I actually really like it. Um, that's a little bit more of a spin-off to a degree. It takes place. It's part of the franchise, but it's also not really part of the franchise, and it takes place like I think 20, 30 years in the future, and it's obviously a sci-fi based story, and but it's great, and I just did a show on that, and then this is Freddy vs. Jason is like the actual spin-off because a few movies back, Paramount Pictures had been distributing all of the Friday the 13th movies, and then they sold the franchise to New Line Cinema, and New Line Cinema is a big major company also, probably most notably known for the Lord of the Ring movies, um, Peter Jackson's movies, and also they've done the Blade movies. Probably the Lord of the Rings movies are probably the most successful or commercial. But they also were very well known for the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, Freddy Krueger starring Robert Englund. They put out that's all New Line Cinema. So they had hinted at when this transition had happened, the franchise had hinted that they were going to do like a crossover thing of where they would pit Freddy Krueger versus Jason Voorhees, and it would be it was deemed to be like this epic battle between these two horror icons, and that when that was hinted at in one of the movies, in I think it was in Jason Goes to Hell, there's a scene at the end of that where you see Freddy's hand and you see Jason Voorhees together with his claws, Freddy Krueger with the blades. They hinted at that could happen down the road, and it was very exciting to see that this was a strong possibility. And many years went by. I think it was like 10 years went by, and the movie, there still wasn't any news if there was actually a film that was going to come out that was going to be pitting these two horror icons. And eventually it did come out. It came out in 2003, Freddy vs. Jason, and it was directed by Ronnie Yu, and it starred Robert Englund, of course, and Ken Kersinger, who plays Jason Voorhees, and it was his debut as of playing Jason, and it also stars Monica Keena, and this was the first film for Ken Kersinger to play Jason Voorhees. He was basically the background of most of the characters, most of the actors that have played Jason Voorhees have always been stuntman, and he was a stuntman also. Before he took the role on of Jason Voorhees, it was Kane Hodder, and Kane Hodder was Jason for 4 movies, and they actually worked together on one of the movies. He was a stuntman on I think two of the movies, Ken Kissinger. But then he was asked to step in as Jason Voorhees, and he's great. He's really terrific in it. I think he's definitely one of the best. He's the only. It was his only movie that I know that he has been in as far as playing Jason. So, and now that it's been announced, that they're gonna make more movies. You never know. Maybe they'll bring him back. But I thought he was really great. He was he was a real imposing, menacing character. And it's funny with Kane Hodder. Talked a lot about him. I I like Kane Hodder a lot, but I've always felt like when he came into the show, he kind of changed Jason's character. I felt like it kind of took on this feel of like he was a little bit more of a over the top kind of professional wrestler, like just kind of weird, not really necessarily a this. I mean, still menacing and intimidating and scary, but just more along the lines of like a professional wrestler, kind of silly and goofy and a little bit harder to take serious. I don't know. Whereas like Ted White felt like, I mean, obviously the whole thing is like not meant to be taken seriously, but Ted White I felt like was just like more imposing and frightening. And I also feel like that's what happened with this new movie. But Kane Hodder's always been very outspoken about how aggressive he was about trying to retain his role as Jason Voorhees because he's great, but he kind of got really worked up about, you know, maintaining that role and trying to keep it a thing for him. And he would actively campaign for, you know, whenever another movie was coming up or coming out or coming up, he would put a lot of, to a degree, a lot of pressure and really push himself onto, you know, onto the filmmakers to try to get him to be on again. Whereas like all the other actors that played Jason, it was pretty much just one person, and there wasn't this like intense campaign where, well, I need to be Jason again kind of thing. So it's kind of weird. I always thought that was kind of strange that he was that way. He's great. That being, I mean, not knocking him, but I always thought that was strange. And there's a funny, weird interview, which is another thing that kind of irks me a little bit about Kane Hodder. There's an interview with him that I saw where he talks about his reaction against after watching Freddy vs. Jason, and he comes across as like kind of bitter, and he comes across as like this thing of like, I don't know why they didn't hire me. I could have done this role. Like I would have made it a little bit better. I would have made Jason a little bit more, you know, menacing or frightening. Kind of negative and kind of kind of comes across as like a little bit of a baby about it. So he's kind of a weird guy that way. He's the only person, an actor in the entire franchise that is kind of that way. So that's one of the reasons I'm not a huge fan of him sometimes. But I think in some of the movies he's great. But I think he's a little bit overrated, and I think he's a little bit stuck up about that whole thing, and he can't let things go. It's kind of weird. Even though he's like clearly left his mark on the franchise, and he's even now he's, you know, so many years later he is like the face of Jason. I mean, he's looked at, because he's played him for 4 movies. He's looked at as Jason Voorhees. A lot of people forget about everybody else because of him, and so he's already got that, you know, nailed. Like he's the biggest guy in the franchise. So it's just funny that he has that view of things, but. Whereas, like, I'm a Ted White guy. You can't go wrong with Ted White. So, yeah, this is an incredible movie, Freddy vs. Jason. I've seen this movie countless times. Unfortunately, I only have it on DVD. I do want to get this on Blu-ray at some point. But it's a really great collection. Comes with 2 discs. There's a really great special features disc where they really go into detail about how they, you know, brought these 2 universes together. And to me, it's like I said, I did a little post and review of this movie on my pages online, and I talked about how I felt like this is like the ultimate kind of love letter to horror films and also to these like iconic characters, Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees. It's like everything that you hoped it to be. I feel like it is. It's everything that you wanted it to be. Like a great combination of both those universes of, you know, Camp Crystal Lake and that whole kind of essence, and then the dream world and surreal world of Nightmare on Elm Street. It's this great combination of both of those things. And they battle the last 30 minutes of the battle between Freddy versus Jason is just incredible. The kills in this movie are just brutal, and there's like literally there's scenes where there's just like blood everywhere, buckets of blood. It's really great. It's like I said, I think it's the ultimate love letter to these characters, and it's incredibly satisfying. And if they ever decided to make a sequel to this, I would definitely see it again because I thought they did a great job. Ronnie Yu did an amazing job with directing it, and yeah, it's like it's better. I was excited about it when it was first announced that it was going to be coming out, and then I was like trying not to get my hopes up too high, but I imagined. And I had imagined in my head this could be really, really great. And when I actually saw the film, it went beyond those expectations. So, yeah, amazing. So, yeah, this is the second to last video for this big, huge series. The next one will be the reboot of Friday the 13th. And this will be the last and final movie of all of this craziness that I've been covering. So that will be the next one. That will be coming up probably in the next couple of days or so. So this is Jason Dean. If you get a chance, like and subscribe my page, pretty please. Uh, and all my Film Fanatic stuff is on there. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Thank you again. Peace.